kick off, how many people here in the audience have actually had a regression therapy session? One? Oh, that's wonderful. So quite a few of you. How many know nothing about regression therapy? Two. Wonderful. You're going to learn a lot today. Okay, you ready, ladies? Let's start, because we've got a few newbies in the audience, with, could you explain to us basically what regression therapy is and how it pertains to time travel? Julia?
Yeah. Hello. Regression therapy is about going through the past, the memories that you might have forgotten about. So, for example, I've just been on holiday in New Zealand and I have about 300 pictures on my camera. I'm going to have to sort out through them. When I sort out through them, I'm going to include all the best pictures that put the trip in a good light. I'm going to forget the pictures which basically don't show the whole thing in a positive light. And we all do that with our memories, so we end up with the selective memories that basically forms the theme of our story, the inner story that we tell ourselves about where we're going, why we're like this, etc. In regression therapy, is it basically, we go and look at all the other pictures that we've forgotten about. So when you're a teenager, you know, I certainly still remember looking at the mirror going, I hate my legs or I hate my hair. Unfortunately, my body was listening at that point in time. It remembers that. I, as the adult, have forgotten that. So when I wonder about why my body's not cooperating, it's about going back to when you made that decision or that belief. So regression therapy, in principle, is simply just about going back and accessing those other memories that are forming and defining you in some way that you might have forgotten about and that are holding you back.
Lovely. That's a nice analogy too. I like that. Karen?
Yes, well, what we experience as a child can affect us and how we interact as adults today, and the same can be said of past life. So all of these experiences are in our subconscious. All of those register in our subconscious. So through hypnotherapy and regression therapy, we still the conscious mind so we can access the subconscious cause to present day conditions such as anxiety, phobias, etc., even some illnesses. So when you actually open up a healing portal into that subconscious cause, going straight to the cause, you know, and why you have a certain illness, why you have anxiety. So whether you're going back into childhood or past life, it's all the same. It's accessing the powerful subconscious. And this allows you to actually receive the healing or the counseling as if it was you were receiving it in that moment. And that's how you can time travel with regression therapy. You can recall such detail in childhood and past lives. It's quite amazing. And that's how regression works.
Thank you. Julia, would you mind giving us a little bit of an overview of the steps involved in an actual regression session?
So in a regression session, and that typically takes between 1.5 to 2 hours, you have to get yourself comfortable in a state where you can access the right side of your brain. So typically it's going into the state between awake and asleep. We refer to it as the alpha stage as well. And just getting ready to work with your subconscious mind, and which it can act like a librarian, and you simply ask it to show you the associations, the memories that relate to the issue or the situation that you want to look at. The subconscious then starts giving you that information, and sometimes I'll take clients in and I'll basically show them how it works by saying, I'll remember a happy time around water. It could be in water at the seaside or in the pool or in the backyard, and they'll go back to a memory around water. Or remember the first time you rode on a bike. If you actually sit there and wait for a few moments, that information and that memory will actually come into you. You'll experience it just like you were there, and once you're there, we can then move you around. So it's basically a bit like riding a tandem bicycle with me into that space. And then one is getting to the memories, those photos that you've forgotten about that are still affecting you in the background. 2 is actually about what you do when you get there, which not many people know about. So, for example, this morning somebody they had a pain up here. They were at my friend's stand, and she was going, oh, I'm on a battlefield, somebody's always stabbing me in the back. And she's stuck there. And I'm looking at her and saying, okay, now you're there, but now I want you to bring in the light, or I want you to bring in the light. And she goes going, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So she's actually then changing the experience that she's having at that point. She's proactively, her future present self is going back into the past, being with her and finding a way for her to release from that moment where she was stabbed in the back. So this is what I mean about being able to do something or change the past. Or, often with people who've been abused as children, just the fact that they don't have to do it on their own, or that their future self goes in and says, this is wrong, and is with them, and this is not your fault. That's enough to change the story for them. So typically that's basically the kind of, it's visiting the memory and then working with the memory to transform it and change the outcome of your future storyline.
Karen, how do you work with regression therapy inside your sessions? Because it's a little different for you.
Yes, I started doing past life regression about 20 years ago, but the last 5 or 6 years I've been really, I've studied holistic counselling, hypnotherapy, trigger point and breath work. So I offer something that's called hypno-rebirthing. So it actually has the client go into a very relaxed state very quickly to access the subconscious, and you hold all of your answers. The subconscious is this incredible mechanism that will show you where current anxieties or limitations began, whether it's in childhood or past life. And there's also the amazing healing power of the subconscious. Once you bring something from the subconscious into the conscious mind, it can also release it that way as well.
Julia, most people, I think, in the audience would understand the concept of a past life regression. Is that correct? Everyone understand that? Did you realise that there were parallel and future lives you could also go to in session? I didn't realise when I had my first regression about 3 years ago with Julia. I went to some weird places that day, 3-hour session. Julia, could you give us an example? Maybe not me, but somebody else. I had some weird stuff go on in my session. So, of an example of maybe a parallel or a future life that you've had?
So I found out quite quickly as well. I think pretty much I was in Bali doing a workshop, and I had an American client go in to look at stuff that was happening with her daughter. And when you're landing in a memory, you kind of really have to start with the basics. Look at the ground. Are you indoors or outdoors? Are you a man, woman, or boy or girl? Because you're not you in this lifetime. So you've got to work out all that scene. And as she was basically answering those questions to me, she's saying, and then we're looking at the landscape around. Are you in a rural setting or an urban setting? Are you in the countryside or in a city? And she's going, I'm in Cambodia, and I'm roughly this age, and it's roughly this time period. Then she's going, but that doesn't work because I'm alive now. So that was obviously we landed in a parallel life. So what happens is that your soul chooses to have different experiences of which this one is only one. Okay? And generally we talk about past lives and future lives because we sort them out according to history, the way we've been taught, in a linear fashion. Chronologically, exactly, in a sequence. But actually they're happening, they're actually happening all at the same time. At the same time, what happens is you might be having 2 or 3 lives at the same time because you've got a lot of lessons on your curriculum and you want to get them done all in one go. So you do get people experiencing parallel lives. And there's also another branch which is called timeline therapy, where you help people look at decisions that they've made in the past. And like, for example, I had a yoga studio owner, he's 40 and he's not committed, and he's going, man, maybe I should have stayed with that girl at high school that I was really, really in love with. Maybe I made the wrong decision.
Maybe you did.
Maybe you did. So that's when I go, well, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Let's check it out. So what we do is we go back to the timeline where he made that decision, and we say, all right, you made this decision, you know how that turned out. We're going to go back and find out how it turned out the other way around. And I sometimes do that when I find people they're in regret. I'll go, okay, well, let's see what happened when you did do that. And that's when you go into other, like I call them alternate realities, where you decided to do something different. And you go down that timeline to see what happens. So that's kind of the parallel, and it's a bit like sliding doors. And then future, again, it doesn't often happen intentionally. It's just somebody asks a question or wants to know where they're on the life path, and then their subconscious or their higher self shows them the memories that are relevant. Sometimes it picks memories from the future. And it could be like just 3 months, 6 months down the line, just to reassure them that they're on the right path, or to warn them that they're on the wrong path. So, for smoking, you can go down both paths. If you continue smoking, what are you going to be like in 3 years, 5 years? What are your kids going to be like? It's all very clear, it gets shown to you. If you stop smoking, that same thing. But then also future on a society levels, or in different realities, that gets shown to people as well. So,
Thanks, Karen, it's said that regression therapy can improve personal relationships by breaking destructive and repetitive patterns. How does this work exactly?
Well, a lot of clients that come to me are noticing a recurring pattern in their life, whether it be emotional or with relationships. So maybe the relationships are only lasting a couple of years, or they're noticing the same problems in their relationships. So your subconscious may take you to a memory in your childhood, or it may take you to a past life. But perhaps your parents had an abusive relationship, or there was abuse involved. So we learn that this is normal, a normal family life. So we can create that in our adult life and create these relationship patterning. So when we go back to the cause, in this instance it might be childhood, you can actually work through the healing of what took place, any trauma, and release it. And then you can release the patterning in your current relationships, which is quite profound.
Wow, I need to come back. Now, Julia, how do you tell the difference between a past, parallel, and future life issue in a session? I mean, it must be confusing.
it is
that out.
Yeah. And that's usually my job, because the client lands in a scene and then I'm trying to sort out and make sense of everything. With the past, we look for clues. And I used to be an investigator, so I always look for a lead. So, I might basically find out what kind of clothes are they wearing, or go into the community, see whether we're talking about farmers or villagers, or whether we're on a spaceship and it's a techie, or you can ask questions like, what year is it, or who is the ruler? So for the past, that's pretty good at sorting out quite quickly where you are roughly in time. And I have had clients go and actually check that information, look it up, and verify it for themselves. For the parallel lives, if it's on this planet in this lifetime, in this sort of century, then you can double check that as well. For the future, it's obviously different because they don't really happen, and then
It hasn't happened, or it is happening, but we don't know it's happening.
But those are the fairly easy. The ones that are really hard is when people go into realms which are not described. So, underwater, worlds with no form, where people aren't completely in body.
Or like the consciousness. I think I went to a single consciousness, remember? I didn't like it there, by the way. I like being me. And we could work out in my session where I was for a while, and then it was just, then you finally got me there, which was great.
Yeah.
By the way, Julia and Karen, I've had progression with both, and they're both excellent.
So the interesting stuff is actually the other realms that are available for experience. So some people refer to them as the galactic. So people go to Pleiades, Orion, and Sirius. And to some extent, I've read about these things so I can recognize them. But there are a lot of other planets where people say the name, I've never heard of it. There's also the between life space. So the void, the unity place. And Harry Potter gets it right in some aspects.
Yeah.
But again, it depends also on what you've read and experienced and what you can relate to. The subconscious is actually just basically translating all that data into scenarios, archetypes that you're familiar with, you're comfortable with, and that you can work with. But, there are some that we will come across that don't mean anything to me, but mean a lot to the client. So it's, the between life is interesting. I mean, I had somebody last week and they're on a conveyor belt after they died. And then they were back in one, but that's kind of, I think that's more metaphysical. So there's that stuff.
Karen, phobias, fear, physical conditions like migraine, allergies, recurring pain in certain spots in the body, are these a typical sign of a turbulent past life, or?
It can be, although it can be something that you're holding on to from this life. It's about just going in and trusting the subconscious will show you, reveal to the client where it began. So, for instance, when I do this work, releasing the emotion and also the muscle memory in the body helps release on the physical level. So I also do breath work and trigger point to help release that memory from the body. So yeah, some people may go back if they have got a phobia about their neck or having anything around their neck, might see that they were, strangled or hung in a past life. And the subconscious, bringing it from the subconscious into the conscious mind, it can also release it simply by saying, well, wait a minute, that doesn't apply to me now. It was a past life. I can let it go. And that's the amazing power of our consciousness in healing itself as well.
Julia, what's the furthest back you've ever taken something in a regression session? Can you share it with us?
Cave times, Neanderthalers.
Yeah,
And,
oh, really?
yeah.
Neanderthals.
And that was actually me. I have an anger management problem, and I went, where did that begin? And I was not. I was kind of a Neanderthaler. I was a bit cross because I had to pretend to be strong. I was protecting my tribe, and if I looked weak, that was it. Our tribe was going to be decimated.
So you were like a Neanderthal snack.
I don't think I had
Sensitive to age
clothes,
diet.
to be honest. I was like a bit of a gorilla. And I've had people go into Time of the Dinosaurs as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I've also had people remember being animals or elephants and bears and things like that. So, to a certain extent, it doesn't really matter about time.
Karen, regression therapy takes a lot of hits in the mainstream world, mostly due because it's associated with childhood abuse and regressing and such. Is there a particular myth you would like to squash in regards to regression therapy?
Yes, some people think that regression therapy is living in the past, or doing past life regression is living in the past. I can say that the conditions, some of the problems and conditions that we have in our life right now, the cause is in the past, and to help us release those, heal and release, and to be able to move forward, the answers are sometimes revisiting a past experience. And the benefits of healing and letting go that trauma or whatever happened, big or small, allows us to live more fully in the moment.